Doyle again. I'm your MC. We have John here, the COO of elvex, and he is bringing the content. We have about 30 minutes of content for you, and then a bunch of time for Q&A afterwards. If you have any questions, want to see anything, you can pop them in the chat. And if nobody has any questions, well, we probably did a poor job of presenting our stuff then.
Or
But
doing an excellent job, Doyle. Come
yeah,
on, we were
and
so
we answered everything there is to know. Yeah. And we'll wrap early in that case. So we have about 10 minutes of slides, about 20 minutes of demos, and we're going to be showing you some stuff live. And John has also, it's very seasonal, prepped a little bit of a March Madness bracket with AI thing. I don't totally understand it. I've been constantly misunderstood my whole life because I'm 6'5", and so people think, oh, basketball. Turns out I'm full of surprises and completely ignorant on the subject. So stick around. We'll be showing you something fun there. And without further ado, I'm going to hand over to John. But please pop questions in the chat whenever anything comes up that you want to know about. So, John, over to you.
Doyle, you're the exact target audience for these apps that I'm going to show off in a little bit. It's for the person who may feel a little insecure about making bracket selections, but wants to participate in the office pool. So if you like what you see in the apps that we show, we will show some apps that are also configured for more like day-to-day professional work as well. But if you're curious about the March Madness stuff, send me a note afterwards, and we can get you access temporarily to those assistants that will show off. And if it helps you have a little bit more fun this March Madness, that would be an amazing outcome from this session. But quick background on me. So as Doyle mentioned, I'm one of the co-founders and COO of elvex. What I'm going to do is screen share. We'll take you through a little bit of an intro, and then we'll get into some live demo. So um, intro to elvex. We are here to help connect your business to LLMs, AI models, and activate them in really, really powerful ways that can transform the way that your business gets work done. Not only can it transform the business and have great outcomes for the business, but as you see the tagline there, find extra hours in your 8 hours. We're looking for ways that we can give you individually time back so that you can apply your days to the things that are going to make the most impact in your work life and in your personal life. So you might be grabbing time back from doing mundane tasks and applying those to more advanced work that you maybe don't have enough time and headspace for, or maybe you need to walk the dog during the middle of the day and you get a nice little bit of exercise. Those are all things that we're really here to help you with. In order to do that, there's a lot that we'll talk about, and we'll touch on some of our customers, some of which you can see on the screen here, how they're activating elvex and AI throughout their business. But there's a lot of things that are really important from a foundational perspective that we'll touch on up front before we get too much farther. And some of that is just like, what are the use cases? Who is AI actually meant for? Who should be using this stuff? And we really see AI as a tool that everybody in the company should be able to have some use cases for. Some may use it more than others, some may use it in a different capacity. But that's the beauty of this platform that we built at elvex, is that it really does persist across every single person in your company. Again, we'll show some use cases as we get a little bit further on. But first, we're going to just highlight some of the pillars that we've kind of built our platform off of. And one is risk mitigation, and that extends from what a chief information security officer might be concerned about, which is, are we putting anything into elvex that is going to train the models that are being used under the surface, which could be ChatGPT, it could be Claude, it could be Gemini, it could be Mistral. And the answer to that is no. We make sure that none of the information that's passing through our system is used for training models. And that's like the big thing that has held back a lot of companies from actually investing in using some of these tools. There's also questions about, well, how are we sure that we're going to get the right responses back? How are we sure they're going to be accurate? And so there's things that we do in our platform to give a better level of security on the accuracy of responses, and just making sure that we're building in transparency so that users feel confident and businesses feel confident rolling this technology out across their workforce. The second thing that we come to is, okay, so we passed the security bridge and we're happy to bring this technology into our organization, but how do we actually activate it? We only have maybe a couple of people in the company who actually know how AI systems work and that we feel really confident can build things that are going to be really powerful for our tools. So that small centralized group of maybe engineers or AI specialists becomes a potential bottleneck. And it becomes a situation where you might find yourself saying, like, well, we want this team to be working on things that are really high value, really powerful, but we're having all of these other like hundreds or thousands of people that have their own individual use cases. How do we like find the right mix here? And so elvex has built a platform that really empowers the business user. You don't need a lot of experience. You don't need to be technical. It's really meant for everyone to get in and start, setting themselves up for success right away. Third thing that we have in our mind is a lot of people have had really underwhelming first experiences with generative AI. And a lot of that I think comes down to using Copilot or Google's Gemini workspace or just ChatGPT, but in an environment that's not data secure. And so you can't put any of your company's confidential information in there. And of course, it's going to be underwhelming in those situations, right? There's a limit to what it can actually do and the ways that you can use it. And so again, because of the things that we are already talking about here, the security layer, the usability, we can add levels of customization and data transfer that make this possibility of 10xing your work productivity much, much closer to a reality. And that's what everyone's looking for, right? So it's very important to make sure that when we're thinking about what are the use cases here and how are we introducing elvex and generative AI to a broader workforce, that we keep some of these historical contexts in mind so that we can make sure that people are understanding, no, this is a little bit different, right? This is something that's actually built for enterprise, it's built for users like you. So we come to the last element here that we've really focused on, which is just like, how do we predict the future? OpenAI obviously is a very well-used platform at this point. There's lots of other platforms that have great models as well. And, which one do we start to build on now if we're a company that's just starting to make our AI investments? And our position is you shouldn't have to make that decision. We see the model competition every single day almost, where there's a new model that's in the news for having some transformative effect on how LLMs will continue developing into the future. So it can be sort of paralyzing for companies, I think, to start, especially if you're a company of like thousands of people or tens of thousands of people. Do we build everything on OpenAI or do we build everything on Google Gemini? What if they are not the best model for us to be using in the future? Or what if we have multiple use cases where different models are, going to have to work together to give us the best outcome? And so elvex as a model agnostic platform that kind of brings together all of these technologies, all of your users, all of your use cases into a single place, gives you way more potential for how you build and roll out AI systems across your business. The way we do this is we sit in between your company and the models. We are the connector, the facilitator there, and we layer additional tools on top. We'll get into some of those additional tools, but that's what really makes our version of generative AI most useful for enterprise businesses. If you think about the way that AI models have kind of come to the forefront here, it started as just like a research project that transformed into a consumer technology, and the enterprise version of these technologies that these model providers put out into the market are really just the same consumer technology with maybe you can like customize your terms of service. That's not good enough. We need additional tools on top to make sure that the use cases are actually handled well, and that's where elvex comes into play. So I'm not going to go through like every single detail on this slide, but it does kind of summarize some of what we've already talked about here, where we're giving access to non-technical users to start to do really powerful things with AI. We're handling the security. We are a tool that is broadly used across every part of an organization. You can use any model that you want to use or any AI platform that you want to use. And we're giving you that centralized control and protection and governance layer that's really, really important in an enterprise setting. There's a few case study slides that we'll just touch on really quickly. I think it's just useful to have this context of like how this stuff is being rolled out in the real world here. So we'll start with case study from McClatchy. And the initial thing that we were solving for them was just like they knew people were using ChatGPT on their own devices, and that was a potential data privacy, data security problem. And so that was the first thing that we solved. We gave them that data private environment for their teams to start working with AI systems. And then they started to, of course, see actual ROI positive use cases developing. And one that we documented with Kat here was, they had a ton of survey data coming back from their customers and from their users, and it was, a rolling sequence of thousands of responses that would come in every, single month. And it's too much for a human to process. And so, again, elvex here is the facilitator to get this work done in the most productive way, where they could start to analyze user feedback that was coming in as it's coming in or over time. And that was saving them lots and lots of time. But more importantly, it was getting work done that otherwise was not able to get done because they didn't have the resources or the time or the skill, because this type of data analysis otherwise would have to be outsourced to either a consultant or another internal team that had the capabilities to run queries on data and to structure data in ways that would be, enabling the type of insights that they were trying to get out. So this was additive to what they were doing. And I think that's an important point to remember here. It's not like AI is here to just make things that you're doing now more efficient. That can be part of it, but it's also adding extra capabilities, extra skill to do things that aren't being done right now. And I think McClatchy here was a great example of that. We have another case study here with Embark. They're a financial consulting services company that saw amazing adoption. We do have a documented case study on this, which is much longer as well, which Doyle may be able to circulate for us after the call here. But what they did extremely well is they were very thoughtful about how they rolled elvex out to their team and had a really structured way that they went about it, which resulted in a 72% adoption rate and lots and lots of time efficiencies for this business. Um, so I think that is, if you are thinking about like, how do we best organize ourselves and roll out a solution like elvex or something else to our team, this would be a great case study to reference. Again, we'll try to circulate that for you all afterwards. And the last one that we'll touch on here is a case study with Automatic. So this is a software company, and it's a more technical, complicated platform that they operate, and end up talking with lots of stakeholders across the team. There's lots of data in different systems, both, here's contract data, here's our key people, here's notes on conversations, call transcripts, lots of information that can inform or can help inform, if you have time to go through all of those notes and information, how we approach the next conversation with the customer. And it was really challenging for them because there was information split across so many different places. But with elvex's help, they connected all of that information into an assistant that was built on top of elvex and helped them just, consolidate everything so that as they're going into a meeting or prepping for a call or preparing a deck or any of those types of use cases, they could reference all of the information very, very quickly and have an output that would give them everything they need to know to approach that conversation. So huge time savings. I like to say it's not time saved, it's time gained to do other activities. And they're having a lot more successful conversations with their customers as a result of this. So that's it for case studies right now. We have more on our website, but we'll share this deck afterwards with y'all as well. Just a few FAQs here. But I think at this point, Doyle, unless there's any questions that we need to address immediately, we can get into some demo.
Yeah, let's do a quick pause and see if anyone has any questions. We are gonna, show you the thing live in a second, but if there's any questions that the audience has, please, speak up. Don't be afraid.
No questions so far, it looks like. Doyle, thanks for sharing the case study live. Love having a partner on calls like this.
That's my job.
All right. Well, let's get into it. So we'll start to show elvex a bit, and you can see I have a bunch of tabs. So I'm gonna, just for time efficiency perspective, I might not run everything live. I might reference some stuff that we've already done, but we can also do some stuff live as well. So to start, as you get into elvex, you can see I can start chatting right away with my favorite LLM. We tend to prefer, or I tend to prefer Claude 3.5 Sonnet, but this could be ChatGPT, it could be Gemini, whichever model you kind of choose. And this is going to be like the exact same experience that you would expect from using those platforms, those chat apps directly, but there are some additional features built in that can help us search for other apps that exist in our instance. And so let's talk about that a little bit more. So I have a bunch of bookmarked apps here. These are ones that I like to reference frequently. And these are apps or assistants that are built with specific instructions connected to data and can do things that are really powerful across my business. This can extend from things like data analysis on a set of information that we want to be able to query without having to actually like write SQL or go into a BI tool. It can be things like, content generation or editing, which maybe like has to stay in line with your brand guidelines or your content guidelines and things like that. It can also be like knowledge assistants, which, for a very simple example, could be an HR assistant that has a data source with all of the policies and handbooks that are accessible to your teammates and becomes a 24/7 question and answer application that anyone in the company can use to get information quickly. Similar thing with the customer support assistant that we have here. So any questions, technical or otherwise, that we have about our own tool, we can come in and use an assistant to give us the information that we need. But I said we're going to start with a little bit of fun. So let's get into a couple March Madness apps that I created here. This one first, if we go to start a new conversation, you'll see there's some prompts that you can suggest to a user to come in here. This assistant in particular is connected to a lot of data that was downloaded from the web about every single team in the NCAA over the last several years, what their performance looks like, all that sort of stuff. So I can say like analyze this one matchup, and I'm going to get an output like this where elvex is going to go through, it's going to reference the data sources that it has access to. It's going to analyze the right information in the data source to help give it the context that it needs to do the analysis. Now, I talked earlier about the transparency factor being really, really important for us. So when you're providing a document or data, we will show you like, here's what we're doing. Or if you're asking elvex to browse the web to get information, we're going to show you what we're searching for and what we're finding so that you can confirm elvex is doing the right things and bringing in the right context, or correct it if it's not. So in this case, it finds the right data. It's going to access the information that it needs, and it's going to use that information now to respond to what we need. It then figures out, oh, we actually need to do another query here too. So I need more context actually to answer this question really well. And then it's going to do what we've asked and give us the prediction on the final score here. So you can mark it down. elvex thinks that Louisville is going to have a 5-point victory over Creighton in the first round of the NCAA tournament. You can mark it on your brackets. Now, what if I don't want to go sort of like matchup by matchup, and that could be a long process to actually get through a whole, 68 team bracket. I want to do something a little bit different, but I'm also a novice and I don't really know what is the right way for me to go about like picking my bracket. So this is an app that's configured to basically take the user through a flow. And as I'm going through this, again, like we're going through this example for a little bit of fun, but you can think about this in a number of other contexts where you might want to bring a user through a flow or a sequence of events that needs to happen before you can get to the right outcome. So in this case, we're starting with a question of, do you know who you want to be your champion? Yeah, I do. I want Florida to be my champion. You can see my Gator in the corner here. Go Gators. Should be a big year for us, hopefully. Fingers crossed. Um, Next question. How many upsets do we want? Do we want a lot of upsets? I want slightly more upsets. Any teams or seeds you want to win or lose opening round, let's put Texas in the Sweet 16. So I'm giving it information that I want it to use to make its selections across an entire bracket. And I'm going to zoom down now to the end, and elvex is going to select my entire bracket here. So it's giving me, here's the first 4 matchups, here's the first round, second round, all the way down to the final 4, the final picks. And it's even going the extra step of giving us like lots of analysis here and justifying the picks that it made based on the data that's loaded into the assistant and the information it gathered from me throughout the conversation. So that begs the question, well, like, what is it actually using here? So in the setup for this assistant, I've given it like, here's all the questions that I want you to ask. I also at some point tell it that you can like pick your own questions. So after the user responds to this step, ask 3 questions of your own choice. This is where you can think about elvex and AI as not just executing your own thoughts, but it can kind of like be creative and help you brainstorm things, and bring new variables into the mix where it's appropriate to do so. So it does a very good job of following all these instructions. This is a more complex set of instructions than I think you may see work well with other platforms that you're using directly. Part of that is because elvex is configured to be able to handle, the right amount of information to do the task. Part of it is also the model that we've selected here, Claude 3.7 Sonnet, is a more powerful model. If I was to try this with a less powerful model, it probably would not execute all of these steps in the way that I want. So that's an important part of the flexibility, again, that we're offering inside of elvex is the ability to navigate to the right model for the right task.
That's a good question, John. And we did get a question in the chat, but like, did you try this with other models and get different bracket suggestions?
I did, yeah. And so I started with ChatGPT 4.0 and I just was not as confident with the level of reliability that I was getting there. I tried it with 3.5 Sonnet, same thing, like it seemed pretty good. When I went to 3.7 Sonnet is where I saw reliability that I actually felt I could trust. And some of that is like if you look at how I've provided data on the tournament teams here, it is like I'm not telling it like here's the matchups, right? I'm telling it here's the teams, here's their seeds. You have to figure out like who's playing who at which round. And so I needed that like extra bit of power in the model to figure out some of those things, which again is like really important because that saved me a bunch of time that I otherwise would have had to set like setting up and structuring how this all works. So yeah, those
Yeah.
types of decisions can be made a lot easier when you have a tool that
Uh,
can go kind of across
Out
models.
of curiosity here, what is MOV? If you scroll up a little bit, what does that mean?
Ah, yes. So MOV is a metric that I actually don't remember the name of, but what we can do is I'll pass this up. Uh,
Yeah.
I'll use our voice to text feature. What is MOV? I see it in the source data, but I don't know what it means. And so this is like another thing that we'll touch on. So margin of victory. Okay, so I didn't explicitly tell it this information, but the model is able to infer it based on its training data and the context in which the rest of the information is being provided here. Now, I'm going to jump ahead to something that I planned on a little bit later. No,
I
I'm
do.
going to for him. Yeah.
John, one moment. We did get a question from Annika. I wanted to acknowledge it live. And Annika, we'll return to it after the end of the demo, but she's saying, this looks great. What's your business model? Is there a license fee? So we'll finish up demoing some of the things. If you have any questions about like how this works, that makes sense in the demo stuff, we can talk about that after the demo's done.
Yep. Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to show a couple other things here that are important to know about how LX works. So we can also attach data sources here. So I'm going to walk through what it looks like to attach a new data source. And there's two different ways that we can do this. We can do a file-based data source upload, or we can connect databases like Snowflake, BigQuery, Postgres, and that can enable like a whole different set of use cases. But for this one, what I did was I said, I got a bunch of files in Google Drive, which I can connect to, and they're in this demos folder, and it is this March Madness 2025 data set. So I can select these folders in the these files in this folder. And once I add these files are now synced live. So if the data in the attached files here change, if there's new data added, if there's files that are removed, if there's files that are changed, that will automatically sync to elvex. This is an incredibly important point because depending on what you're doing with an AI assistant, it might need to be like a living, breathing thing, right? It might need to know the most updated information. Even thinking about a use case that we have internally, which was that elvex support assistant, right? This one that we talked about here, we release a new product every week. And so if the elvex support assistant does not know the latest about our product, it's not going to be as useful. And so the fact that we can sync to live versions of data documentation enables a lot more use cases with way more efficiency than otherwise having to like manually keep these things up to date all the time just for the purpose of the elvex assistant. A few other things that I can show here. So you have the ability to add different tools to the elvex assistants that you're creating. And these are important because some of these things enable things that the model can't do themselves. So like Claude, the Anthropic models that you see here, Claude is a really powerful model. People love it. It has a great writing style. It can do a lot of tasks, but it can't actually access the internet live. It can't search for information. It can't visit a web page. But inside of elvex, it can. So these are examples of things that we're doing that can power up the models and make them more capable than if you were just using them directly. Same thing with image generation. Claude does not produce images, but inside of elvex, it can actually produce images and it saves you from having to like fracture your workflow and use ChatGPT for one thing, Perplexity for another, Anthropic for another, and you can kind of unify all of those things in a single platform like elvex.
We did get a good question earlier from Maggie, which is for someone who is not as good at evaluating the different LLM models, does Elvex do anything to help them pick one?
Yep. So there's a few things that we can do. One is, so I just showed you kind of like the manual process of creating an app. We do also have an app builder, which we can show an example of. So let's say we have a use case here where we know what we want to build, but we don't know all the details of how we should set it up. So we can just say, build an app that references client engagement data and sales collateral to build an account plan for a new prospect. And it's going to ask us some additional questions so that it has all the information it needs. And then it will say, here's the recommended app that we think you should build. You can click here and it will create the first version of that app. It's going to have all the details that are pre-filled for you. So you don't have to necessarily make all of those decisions yourself. It's going to pre-fill based on the use case and what you've explained, what you've provided in context. The other thing to reference here is that we do provide onboarding, training, customer support. It's fairly common that a user will come to us and say, hey, this is the first time I'm ever using something like elvex or ChatGPT. I'm not sure exactly how to do this thing that I'm trying to do. I'm not sure which model that I should choose. I'm not sure what level of instruction I need to provide. Can you help me? And we will do one-on-one calls with customers to help them get their concept to a production ready platform. Thanks for that question.
All right, let's keep going.
Cool. All right, last basketball use case. So elvex can also analyze images. It can analyze and describe them. It can extract content from them. In this case, I've given it my bracket and I've said, hey, analyze this bracket and like, basically tell me if the pics are good or not. So it's taking this bracket, it's taking the data sources and doing some reference analysis for it and it is giving me this written summary and document basically, and it's giving me a B plus, so not bad. What's really nice about this feature, for those of you that are familiar with ChatGPT, there's a tool called Canvas. Again, this is our own version of this tool that allows for document creation and iteration, and we're using it on any model that we want to connect to here. So I can say, no, this is nonsense. This is an A plus bracket, and I'm just going to make that change myself. Or I can say, like, this executive summary is too long, shorten this section, and and elvex will do a targeted rewrite just of that section, keeping the rest of the doc in place. So for those of you that are thinking about like, how can I use a tool like elvex for content generation or for generating reports or even code or spreadsheets, this is a really valuable tool because it does make it a more interactive platform that you can basically just move faster with. So yeah, it's changed the exec summary and I didn't actually save the A plus grade, so it reverted that to B plus, but that's the correct thing that it did because I didn't save my changes there. All right. Now, we can get to a few other use cases here. And first one here that I have up is I'll skip the use case, I think, because we've kind of showed a lot of data analysis use cases. But one thing I did say that we would come back to is the database connectors and how this all works. So where you have use cases that would benefit from connecting to directly like a Snowflake or BigQuery or other database, we can support those. And there's some things that are really nice here. So we're going to be able to live query those databases. You're not going to have to like download them into a spreadsheet and then like upload them into elvex. We're just querying the database directly. And we're doing some things here to make sure that we are understanding the data and communicating to the user that we understand the data correctly. So these descriptions that you see here, if there are descriptions of the the fields in the data itself, in the data tables, we'll use those. If not, we'll create this data dictionary for you, which you can overwrite. So if this is completely wrong, we can change it and make sure that the LLM has the right context. That enables us to do queries like you can see in here to basically like get the right information that we need reported quickly throughout the business. So where does this become really useful in organizations? Well, most organizations have very few analysts supporting lots of teammates, and again, can become a little bit of a bottleneck. And this can be a way to give people access to the information they need in a safe, well-constructed environment so that they can pull down the information with the right context. What's also nice is even if you're a very experienced analyst and you don't really like need the help to query the data, there's still benefits to using a platform like elvex because you can ask it to give you a not just like here's the number answer, but write a report, give me the context, give me the analysis, and have that draft pre-written for you, which could save a ton of time.
We got a question in the chat. Did you have more to show on that? Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay, we got a question from Adam, and I think I'll answer this one, but I'll say it live. Any comments on your thoughts behind UX and adoption compared to some of the standalone LLM UIs? And so our approach here is that user friendliness is massively important. And like we really want everyone at the organization to feel like they can log in and use it and they're not intimidated by these like incoherent Byzantine mazes of options and buttons and things like that. We also look at what is going on in the market and seeing what are the best features that people are raving about across the various LLM providers. And we bring the best of breed features into one coherent, persistent UI, no matter what model you actually plug into it on the back end. So, for example, Claude can't do web browsing. With elvex, it can. And so we've equipped, because we've separated those things out, we have equipped Claude with web browsing because anybody who makes an assistant might want to attach, web browsing to the functionality. Another example of that is, for example, voice mode is a very common feature. We've pulled that in. Data analysis, obviously. What are some of the other ones that we've pulled in? Drafts. So there's artifacts and Canvas are what is in Anthropic and OpenAI's features, but Google doesn't have drafts or artifacts or Canvas, whatever you want to call it. But with elvex, it does. So you're able to bring all of those features into one consistent UI, and that's kind of how we think about it.
Yeah. And I would also add like the way that elvex can extend into other tools that you may be using across the business. So like we use Slack heavily, and you can make your elvex apps work right in Slack. And you see an example of this here where it's just going to thread the response and I can continue to interact here. So I can say write an email to a customer about this. And it's kind of like mimicking the same type of interaction that you would expect to have in the interface, but you're doing it in the system that you're already working within. Another thing that might be useful is like we have a workflow that we're building as a proof of concept inside of elvex, but really for it to make an impact for our business, it would have to be integrated and work at scale across some other technology. And so there is an API that you can use to integrate elvex into other workflows or places or connect to Zapier and like add further automation to it. So those types of things, when you think about like, okay, how does this actually scale across like a wide organization, or how do we take like a really, really critical use case and enable it automatically without people having to necessarily touch it to kick it off? Those are things that are also extremely possible here. Were there any other questions or what am I missing, Doyle? Anything that we didn't touch on yet?
No other questions yet. Um, so I guess back to you.
Cool. Well, yeah, I just had like a couple more use cases that we can run through as maybe some inspiration here. But what we're showing in this example, this is a research assistant, and it's connected with some data sources here. So it has access to our sales and marketing material, and we can ask it to do some research on a company or on a person or both, and come up with okay, here's the research, and also here's the the email draft that we can set up. Again, it has to adhere to the instructions that we have, which is to use information from the data sources so that we can make this really targeted. And if you think about like a much larger organization than elvex is at this point, where you may have like hundreds of people, thousands of people in the organization, hundreds or thousands of customers as well, dozens of case studies, selecting the right case studies and pairing it with the right person with the right message, like all of the details that end up being output in an example like this are really, really important. What you don't want and what you see often is really poorly customized, and like we call things personalization, but they're really not. They're customized, right? What we want to get to in an instance like this is personalization, where we are actually like sharing the right case study with the right person and the right company based on the relevance and things that we know that they are caring about, want to accomplish, and things like that. So it's like being able to tie together multiple steps here where we're doing some level of analysis on a company. We could add additional like web research to this if we were researching a specific person or initiative that they have, and tying that back together with the things that we are providing explicitly in our documentation to make them work really nicely together.
John, I know you have a couple more tabs here, but I did want to point out that it might be good to show some of the analytics or the team features or the management as side of things.
Yeah, so we do have some admin level features that are good to be aware of. And just to touch on like how this all works from like a back end perspective, you as the customer are choosing which models you want to enable for your company. And we support a number. So whether you're using, regular OpenAI or Anthropic or whatever, or if you're hosting models on Bedrock, it's pretty simple to just enter in the credentials and enable the models that you have in that environment for your teammates that you add on here terms of managing and enabling teammates, we do support SAML SSO. Most of our customers will use Okta or some other identity provider. Makes login and security super, super simple. And then there's also different roles that we enable. So if you want to take a more conservative approach, you can enable users as consumers, which means that they can't actually create their own apps and data sources, but they can use apps and data sources that are created by others. This is a more like centralized approach where you're saying we have a team that is kind of like overseeing the use of elvex and creating and enabling the use cases that people can use that are like approved use cases for the business. That's a somewhat common way for businesses to start onboarding people and then escalating them to a creator role where they can start to build their own. So as they get inspiration for like, oh, there's a problem that I'm facing right now, or there's an opportunity that I see, they are enabled to go and build their own. And then there's admin roles as well that have access to the setting screens like you're seeing here and some other features and functionality. One thing that we do get really good feedback on is the analytics that we provide on usage and how people are actually like activating this within their daily workflows. Not something that's easy to get from other platform providers, and it's really, really important. I really believe that the technology that we have here is really helpful. The UI UX is really great, and that invites people into the experience in a way that allows them to do more. But it is really, really important for the team who's kind of like bringing elvex in or other, really like any software. If you're bringing software in, there needs to be some some visibility into how it's being used so that you can focus on how to enable the team to work better with it. And so we have like pretty deep ability to see exactly how people are using the platform, what they're doing with it, where they need to kind of like level up, or if there are hidden gems that people aren't using that they, should start using to be more effective within their own roles. Last thing that I'll highlight here is we do keep event logs as well. So for those that are more security minded or have requirements for auditability or other needs on the security side, we do keep a record of every single request that comes through the platform that you could do further analytics on or just investigation if there becomes some reason to investigate at some point down the line. But usually this is not something that's needed, but it's a for some businesses that are like in finance, insurance. These are kind of like required table stakes features that must be available for a company to adopt.
I've put into the chat a prompt to ask questions if you have them. Adam is now asking, are you compatible with individual users? For example, if someone wants to test out elvex before pitching it to decision makers.
Yeah, so for those of you that may be looking at this and saying like, oh, we're kind of interested, like what happens next? We're happy to do a follow-up conversation, learn a little bit more about your organization, and make sure that we can match to what your expectations are and what your use cases are. We can also help you identify what the use cases are that would be important to highlight across your business. We do often do a light proof of concept where you can say, here's a use case that we have. How would we activate this inside of elvex, or can we see if it actually like is a use case that would work well in elvex? And we're happy to go through that process. Luckily, because of the system that we built here, most of these things can be created pretty quickly. So we're happy to engage there and then use that as a way to introduce it to a broader set of people across the business. One other thing that I did want to show here is this concept of workflows basically inside of elvex. And I'm not going to go too deep into a demo here, but there are some use cases that just the user requires more control or needs a longer set of sequence steps that needs to happen extremely reliably every single time you run it. And that's what flows is here. So in this case, we have an 11-step process to basically take a webinar transcript and turn it into a white paper. So maybe we'll use this. I don't know. This might not be the most interesting one to use this for, but when we have used this in the past, it's been helpful to create some of the white papers and assets that we have as leave behinds. But this gives you a very strong capability to say, at this step, I need exactly this to happen in this exact way. I need it to reference this document for knowledge. I need it to search the web for certain information that we don't have or need to find like updated information on, or we need to query a certain set of data to fill in the necessary context for this part of the process. So this can be really, really powerful for some of those processes that are a little bit more complex and require much more reliability over the steps that need to happen in the sequence. Okay, so
Okay,
a
we
question.
have, yep.
Had to step away briefly, so maybe I missed it. Do you just have usage as a monetization model or others? I'm not sure I understand that question, actually, Marco. Apologies. Seat-based. Okay. So yeah, there was the question earlier about our business model, so we can touch on that now. We actually do not charge based on user seats at all. So most of our customers will activate their entire company on elvex because they're not penalized for doing that. Our perspective is seat-based models are not particularly good for this type of technology. That's still a little bit earlier stage on the adoption curve. And what we really need to do is invite people in to start experimenting and building up their use cases and getting to that ROI positive impact as quickly as possible. And what we see in the market is companies that are facing this seat-based pricing model, and they're deciding, okay, we can spend like, another $30 a month per user on Copilot, and then another 60 on ChatGPT Enterprise, and then some people also want access to Claude, so that's another $40 per user per seat. That becomes incredibly expensive very, very quickly, and it creates this decision point for the company where they have to decide, who do we think is worth giving access to? And that's not at all what we need with this technology. We need people with hands-on as fast as possible so that they can start to learn it and incorporate it into the work that they're doing on a daily basis. So we don't charge by seats. We want everyone to have access. We do charge based on usage. And so it's a traditional SaaS model, annual annual contracts, 12-month minimum. And we basically work with you to understand the scale of operation that you're looking to deploy across and the use cases that you have. And we can give you an estimate of what we would expect the volume to be on a monthly basis. And that's where that's how the pricing is determined. With that, of course, comes our, like I said before, customer support, onboarding, training. So it's a bit of services on top of the platform itself, just so that we can make sure that we're introducing this technology in the most successful way possible, training your teams, identifying the use cases, helping you build the assistants if you need help building them, and then activating them across your business.
Does that answer your question, Marco? Okay, cool. Calling now for any other Q&A. Speak up now or hold your peace. I'll give you another 10 seconds or so to submit a question. Hopefully this can help you choose your brackets. Oh
Yeah.
man, John, I didn't make the final slide. Oh,
Well, if you'd like to reach
left
out,
out.
we're easy to find. John at elvex.ai or Doyle at elvex.ai. And we would be happy to give you access to the March Madness apps, have some fun. We also have a bracket on ESPN if you'd like to join that. We have a bunch of elvex users in there, and could, again, just be some fun way to start to introduce AI into your world, into your company. And feel free to reach out to us for any other reasons too. We're happy to chat.
All right, everybody. Thank you. Have a good rest of your day.